Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're delighted to have Patrick Driscoll on the program. He's a venture capitalist, LGBTQ plus advocate, a leader in the startup ecosystem, strong background in international relations, management, international development, and a bunch of other stuff. Patrick, welcome to the pod. Would love to get an intro from you for the audience.
For sure. Thanks so much, Brian, for the brief introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. My background, I currently am a general partner of a venture capital fund called Chasing Rainbows. My road to get to be in this position is a little complicated, but in hindsight, it does make sense. And I started my career in international development, actually graduated from American University in Washington, D.C. with the goal of working with the United Nations or USAID or an organization where I would travel and help folks on the ground in emerging economies all over the globe. And I got a job right after college doing that. I worked in recruitment, really got to meet some amazing leaders in international development. That was a little frustrating as well because I wanted to serve in the field, and unfortunately, you couldn't serve in the field unless you had experience in the field. One of those things similar to venture, exactly,
Yeah.
similar to venture capital.
Yeah,
Totally.
Can't get a job in venture unless you have experience in venture.
Yep. And so I proceeded to then go. I went to grad school at the University of Denver as part of the Peace Corps Masters International Program. So I served in the Peace Corps in Senegal for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And completed my master's degree in international economic development while there, in addition to completing coursework at the University of Denver. And while on the ground in Senegal, I fell in love with helping entrepreneurs specifically. I wrote my thesis in the utilization of microfinance in the economic community of West African states in the ecotourism sector specifically. So really was working hands-on with entrepreneurs, building hotels, tourism businesses, artisanal product development. There was some international trade component there, marketing, online, brand development, lots of strategy, down to financial record keeping, those types of things. So really kind of loved helping the entrepreneur. Fast forward to the end of that experience, I kind of was disillusioned with international development in terms of some of the negative impacts. There's some issues with white savior complex as well that I was not super happy with. And by the time I was wrapping up my service in the Peace Corps and submitted my thesis for my master's degree, I thought that development in general was something that was good, but there was a ton of problems with it. But economic development through entrepreneurship was something that would have a long-lasting impact and help bring people up out of poverty. So that kind of transitioned more over into really empowering the entrepreneur. I ended up in LATAM, in Bogota, Colombia, and then in Mexico City, working with a variety of organizations doing entrepreneurial training and leadership training before ending up at the Small Business Administration back in the States, where I was a lender relations specialist in Los Angeles and got to see the big institutional perspective of the federal government and work with those large institutions who are lending to small businesses. So I got like
microfinance in our developed Western economy.
Exactly. They actually do have a microfinance program. The U.S. Small Business Administration does.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, way different numbers. And really loved it. That was the first time I was in a very structured environment around entrepreneurship, empowerment, or entrepreneurial kind of development and education. And I was able to represent the U.S. Small Business Administration at a ton of different, the SBA at a ton of different organizations. Sat at the mayor's office in LA on a panel, and that's where I first learned about venture capital and acceleration. An Accelerator program manager was on this panel, and I sat there as a rep for the federal government, kind of dealing with the bureaucracy and all this slow-moving components that come with being a federal employee. This venture capitalist got up and spoke about their impact, and this accelerator manager got up and spoke about their impact. And that night I got home and looked up different roles that were available in VC and in acceleration. Found a
Amazing.
role at 500 startups back in Mexico City, where I was actually trying to get back to because I had lived there before. And right place, right time, got that role and hit the ground running in venture capital.
What was that role?
That role was I ran investor education programs for 500 Global, which was the best way to learn about VC because they were called Venture Capital Unlocked, VC Unlocked, in partnership with Stanford. There was a program at Berkeley, at INSEAD. I got to manage all those programs and sit in the back of these classrooms to learn about venture. We were educating burgeoning VCs, folks from the government, folks from corporates about how to grow and scale venture initiatives in whatever geography that they were coming from. And so kind of harken back to my international development in a weird way, but also progressed my venture capital career because I was learning how to actually launch a fund, scale a fund, find LPs, fund administration, all that stuff while running the operations of the education program itself. So it was the best way for me to, I didn't even realize how great of a way it was for me to break into VC until I retroactively looked back.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Why is 500 running a program like that? What is it? What's in it for them?
For sure. 500, I think, has had a pretty international goal since the get-go, right? So they started investing outside of the US way earlier than a lot of other VC funds, for example. They launched these accelerator programs for startups in Southeast Asia, throughout LATAM, in Europe, etc. So when they were focusing on building up the startup ecosystem, all of those startups then needed investors. So they thought, let's start creating more of an investor ecosystem in these new geos. So they launched Venture Capital Unlocked and got great partnerships with these institutions like Stanford and Berkeley. And INSEAD, and this was years ago. I know Berkeley has its own program now. And the catalyzation of these ecosystems with the investor education, the startup education, and then they did corporate education as well with CVC type stuff and innovation programs for corporates to better engage with local startup ecosystems. Ideally, that would launch the next generation of investable companies in sub-Saharan Africa or Cambodia for 500 to theoretically invest into in the future. So it's kind of like a long-term ecosystem development play.
And then what happened? So you how long were you at 500 and what did you do next?
Yeah, I mean, 500, I was there for about 2.5 years. I traveled the globe running these programs, so couldn't complain.
Wow. Yeah.
I learned everything that I could. I moved back to the States in 2019, right in time for COVID, to crush all of my dreams. I wanted to launch a 500 program in LA, if possible, similar to what 500 was doing in Miami.
Yeah.
But COVID really took the wind out of my sails, and before it was even off the ground, it was dead. So I joined a startup as a contractor, helped them raise their Series A. So I got that experience, which was, and now as an investor, I'm so happy that I have. Before joining a firm called BM&T, where I ran this, I was a venture lead. So essentially I ran their H4X Labs Accelerator program and managed venture capital relations for all of their portfolio companies. So that was about 22 companies that each received about $1 million non-dilutive funding, which was a great mechanism. A lot of these companies didn't even think that it was real. So we had to convince them that it wasn't a scam.
Yeah. You're actually going to get $1 million.
Yes.
And no strings attached, just because you're working in an area that we want to fund, and
yep, it was some DoD money technically, and we were the ones that were giving it. So they were theoretically grants, but we got warrants. The firm got warrants, I should say.
Okay.
And that was kind of the benefit to us as the organizer of the Accelerator program. So that was fantastic. Got into portfolio management, startup support. How can we get these companies beyond these KPIs that we would set up for them and achieve these milestones, and then pass them off to the next investor, Series A or Series B, whatever it might be. So that was great. And after BM&T, I was poached by Carta to run their VC product marketing, which was an exciting time to be in a tech company when everyone was hiring like crazy and before the market kind of collapsed, Carta was exploding, and their VC product was going up market. They wanted someone to come in who spoke VC. I didn't know anything about marketing, but they really relied on my experience in the venture capital arena to position its products and the brand positioning and all of the narratives around what a venture capitalist actually wants out of a product for a fund admin. So that was honestly, I got that marketing experience, which is my biggest takeaway from my time at Carta. And, at this, all of this was happening. And starting when I was in Mexico City with 500, I was doing side volunteer work with LGBTQ plus founders. So that was always kind of a passion of mine. And I was with 500 startups, now 500 global, volunteering with Techstars, who had a specific program for LGBTQ plus founders, which, if you know the dynamics of Techstars versus 500 versus YC, specifically back then, it was like not real drama, but it was interesting.
Oh, yeah? I don't know the context. What was the drama back then?
It's just friendly competition. They were all kind of
shots fired a little bit, like
totally.
Yeah.
They all were accelerating cool companies and claiming that they were the best accelerator.
Right.
But Techstars had this great LGBTQ plus specific program, so I was able to.
Techstars and 500 are just, from a volume perspective, just much bigger than YC, I would imagine. Right? Just in terms of its sheer number. They called it 500 originally because I think they're going to put 500 in the original fund or something like that.
Exactly.
Like 12 years ago.
Back when I was there, it was over 2K. So
per year.
At this, and that was a couple years ago. So I don't even know what number they're at today. But
same with Techstars, right? They're such a global, local organization. I have lots of my portfolio companies that will invest either before, during, or after the Techstars or 500 or YC programs. They're all great programs, I think. They all have their pluses and minuses, I guess. But, and like Techstars is everywhere, right? They got a Seattle program and a New York program and a Toronto, list goes on.
Yeah, I think there's one here in LA at USC. There's, their programs everywhere, and 500 is similar in scope. But they were doing this LGBTQ plus thing and got involved there. When I moved back to the States, I got involved with StartOut. Actually, right before I moved back, I hosted about 30 LGBTQ plus angel investors in Mexico City from the US, Canada, and the UK to do a LATAM ecosystem exploration trip to see what types of investments existed, if they were viable with LGBTQ plus founders in Mexico City, and also founders that came to Mexico City from other parts of LATAM. So this was always kind of a passion of mine. Fast forward to the States, that was done through Gangels. I joined Gangels as a venture partner.
What year was that?
I moved back to the States in 2019. So it all kind of got kicked off in 2019.
I think that's when we first crossed paths, because I started collaborating. I think I was investing with Gangels at some point, maybe 2019. And then when I had my own syndicate going, Team Ignite, we were obviously collaborating on a lot of deal flow. And co-syndicating and all that stuff.
Yeah, so many deals go through Gangels. It's a machine.
They're big. Yeah,
a machine for sure, and a great team. And part of the reason why we exist, my fund now, is because of the foundation that Gangels and StartOut and Lesbians Who Tech, Out in Tech, all these other ecosystem players that existed 8, 10, 15 years prior. They were able to set up this fantastic groundwork that has enabled us to kind of launch successfully. But I also joined StartOut. I chaired several boards there. Again, this was always on the side as in volunteer positions. So basically 2 full-time jobs. My paid VC job, and whether it be managing an accelerator or doing product marketing, on the side doing all of this LGBTQ plus advocacy work and education for investors, people looking to angel invest. I ran several sessions on how to invest into your first company if you're an LGBTQ plus angel investor or thinking about it, founder education, networking, all those types of things. So just always kind of loved it. And Ben Stokes, my business partner, he sold his company, Social Table, in, I believe, 2020 or 2021, and made several angel investments, and noticed that all of his angel investments were going into great LGBTQ plus founded companies. Why not start a fund? And he had watched my career. He actually sat on a board of mine when I was at StartOut, and then I was on a board of his at StartOut, and asked me to join as general partner in 2022 in June. So it'll be 2 years.
So he had the fund in place by the time you joined?
He had launched it as a rolling fund
Mm-hmm.
on AngelList. So for those that don't know, a rolling fund is a mechanism where you invest based on quarters. So each quarter you re-up the fund, and any LP that gets into that quarter only has access to the deals that are invested into out of that quarter. Right. So it's rolling, so continuously re-upping. And when I joined, pros and cons. Yep. Totally. It's a great way to get a name for yourself, I'd say. If you it's
kind of like that bridge between having a syndicate and having a traditional 10-year fund.
Yep.
And some people forgo the traditional 10-year fund altogether, and they just go, I'm just going to do the rolling fund. I got enough brand.
Yep.
And I don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of like raising a 10-year fund every, call it 3 years.
Exactly.
Rather just, you want to join, here it is. And if you don't want to join, that's fine.
And most, a good, well-oiled rolling fund will have LPs re-up every quarter. So you don't even have to do much work after a while. It's just continuous.
Yeah, it just kind of continues rolling.
Yep, exactly.
It started as a rolling fund back in like 2020-ish, and then what happened?
So he was an angel. He was an angel investor, and then he launched the rolling fund in 2020. I think the beginning part of 2022, or maybe end of 2021.
Yep.
I joined in summer 2022. We were going to continue it as a rolling fund until we got enough traction, but we took a look at the portfolio, and there was plenty of really great companies already. So we decided, let's just do the traditional $10 million fund one, 10-year fund, and we kicked it off in January, and it really was a marriage of finally all this volunteer side advocacy work that I've been doing and my venture career, and it was exactly what I wanted to do. I remember my boss at 500 Startups, 500 Global, I always mess up the name now when they changed it, Paulina, she told me when I left 500 that she would not be surprised if I had not started an LGBTQ plus venture capital fund in the near future. And in my head, I wanted to do that by the time I hit 40, which I have a couple years until I hit 40.
Oh.
And when Ben approached me to asked me to be the GP of this fund, it was well ahead of schedule, and it just was right place, right time, everything that I wanted. And hit the ground running. I said yes, signed the dotted line, and we started raising Fund 1 January 1st, 2023. We kicked off fundraising. Yeah.
Nice. And I'm guessing you guys did it publicly because you're talking about it.
Yes, we did indeed. We opted to do 506c.
Yep.
Which I'm very glad we did. We are able to talk about it publicly. We've gotten some great LP dollars in through, some podcasts, different ads, lots of LinkedIn posts, socials, those types of things.
Yeah.
We're on panels constantly. Ben travels the world speaking on panels, and he's getting a lot of great visibility for the fund there.
Yeah.
If you can talk, if you're getting that type of, it makes sense. There are pros and cons to this, just as there are pros and cons to everything. We have to make sure all of our LPs are accredited investor,
right.
Proven. We actually go through a website that is quite costly.
They got to submit documentation, and there's a third-party service that does that, and it just adds cost to the fund and things like that. Yeah, and some friction too, because some LPs are like, I don't want to share my tax returns, or I don't want to share this.
Exactly. There are ways to make it easier for LPs, but it's still a headache and a half.
Yeah, you can have like a third party, like a lawyer, certify. I've reviewed the docs, and I do certify.
Yep.
This person is accredited. That way,
exactly.
You never technically see it, or the fund admin.
And then that goes in a little folder. So if we're ever audited or anything, we can just refer back to that folder for all of our LPs.
Yep.
But it's been working out in our favor, I'd say. So it's worked out.
No, I think especially for first time fund managers, right? First time funds. I think doing it in public with a brand, you can go talk to your target audience, which is this community. That you're both tell us about a little bit about the fund thesis. And I would imagine, from what I know about venture, when you have a very refined thesis like this, it's easier to fundraise because it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But tell us more about it.
100% agree. And our thesis is we invest into LGBTQ plus founded companies, early stage, some level of traction, pre-seed for the most part. We'll go up to seed. And we will consider a later stage company, but we haven't crossed that bridge really yet.
Right.
And
how many companies, what check size, all that stuff?
We're targeting about, well, currently we have 10 companies, 50 to 250K checks. We will follow on. So oftentimes we'll do a 50K check and then we'll double up with another 200K. We'll max out at 250.
Interesting.
If we really
and then
like
so like you'll do maybe a 50K in the pre-seed, and then okay, wow, you're hitting some good milestones here.
Yep.
We'll double down in the seed, or maybe even the A at that point.
Exactly.
Another 200K. Got it.
Yep. And we get into in terms of the whole thesis of it all, we, as I mentioned earlier, the foundation for LGBTQ plus founders was laid with StartOut and Gangels and Lesbians in Tech and Out in Tech, all these four parents of us. And we're kind of
the ancestors. The Greek gods to our demigods. Or
totally.
Whatever. We're watching Percy Jackson.
Yeah. Love that.
That's a good one.
We are now kind of reaping the benefits of all of the bountiful harvest that basically we see in front of us. We get questions from LPs all the time, specifically those who are perhaps older and don't really know much about the LGBTQ plus community or don't have family members in the community. Are there actually enough investable founders that are
That was going to be my next
plus?
question. That's probably like FAQ number one on your deck is are there enough investable startups in this ecosystem?
And let's just say, StartOut has 25,000 members plus, which is an LGBTQ plus startup founder ecosystem builder, right?
Yeah.
Gangels is invested into hundreds of companies, Lesbians in Tech, Out in Tech. There's Unicorns in Tech. There are all these European actors that are educating the next generation of LGBTQ plus leaders that are engineers or technical specialists.
Yeah.
They're arming them with entrepreneurial skill sets as well to launch their next companies.
Yeah.
So we have a fire hydrant of deal flow coming in from all directions. And I always try to, and also folks don't realize that as generation Alpha, Generation Z continue to get older, the percentage of LGBTQ plus youth or folks of those generations are exceeding 20%. So it looks like the LGBTQ plus population in general will be nearing 25% of the general population within the next.
Was it always historically, you think, from a evolutionary psychology perspective, was there always like 1/4 to 1/5 of us were in that community and we just kind of hit it because of cultural norms?
So I would say based off of what's happening right now, yes. There was always this idea of 1 in 10%. That was a number that I grew up kind of fearing.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing a much higher number in Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And there's an interesting example that folks like to give about left-handed people because being left-handed was trained out of you in school. So there was
they'd like tie your left hand behind your back and stuff like that. They do all kinds of weird stuff.
Exactly. So there was somebody said that there was only I know somebody, whatever the stat was, there's like 10% of all humans are left-handed. But then in actuality, when left-handed people when there came to the realization that being left-handed isn't a bad thing, it turns out more like 50% of all humans are left-handed.
Really? Upwards of 50%.
Yes. So it's not, there's not any sort of reason why.
That's amazing.
But the reason why there were less people was because society made left-handed people kind of non-existent.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. That's the comparison that folks
we're studying Greek history right now too, which is really fascinating because 2,500 years ago it was quite normal for a man to have sexual relations with another man. I mean, like literally that was like the standard. Philip II, the father of the Alexander the Great, literally had multiple male lovers. Like that was just normal.
Yeah.
And like somehow through Christianity and kind of that sort of cultural oppression, kind of just got marginalized and pushed to the to the corners or something.
For sure. I mean, the morality of religion X, Y, or Z has historically been anti-LGBTQ plus, anti anything that fits outside of the heterosexual norm for reason XYZ that I don't think we need to get into on this podcast.
Right.
But
That's why I
it's
called it the
changing.
Ignite podcast, by the way. I could have called it some, venture blah, blah, blah podcast, but I wanted to be able to talk about anything that was interesting to me.
Well, there's some
Yeah.
level of enlightenment, I think, happening
Yeah.
with technology and access to information. And I refer a lot, I give a lot of credit to media and entertainment on the normalization of LGBTQ plus people in the world today. Because when
Yeah.
I was growing up, there was maybe 1, 2, 3 shows that had an LGBTQ plus character. They were
Right.
always portrayed in a specific way, whether it be super butch if it was a lesbian character, or super femme if it was a gay male character.
Right. Right.
And now you turn to any streaming service and there's a ton of LGBTQ plus characters within a stone throw. You go through 1 or 2 shows and there's always at least 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're painted in positive lights.
Yeah.
Historically on Disney films, the villains were all coded as queer. There are all these kind of cultural shifts in the media that has allowed, I think, the younger generation, Gen Z specifically, even younger millennials, to accept their LGBTQ plus identity because it's being shown in a positive light in media. And I'm super thankful for that, because I grew up with a lot of self-hate, and I wanted to be anything but. And I went to Catholic school. I tried to pray the gay way, did not work. All that stuff. So I'm super excited for, knock on wood, that we're going to continue in this direction where kids can actually feel like they belong and don't have to change or adhere to whatever standard we think they think they have to, based off of.
I love that. I love that about the United States. Generally our American culture. It could, there's lots of exceptions and dark corners of our society, and or bigotry and prejudice and all that stuff. But I think on the long arc of American history, there's more tolerance, more openness, and I think it leads to a lot more creativity and self-expression, which I think is one of our core differentiators as a country, is that we allow people to be themselves and express themselves fully through constitutionally protected rights like free speech. And I think that leads to just a stronger, more vibrant, creative economy. And I think going forward, post AI, post the lack of technological differentiation, the lack of moats, I think all you're left with is kind of your imagination. And
totally.
I think people, the greater freedom that they have to be themselves, the better off everyone is.
Yeah. And, if I'm a founder and I'm constantly worried about getting found out about my sexuality, or if I'm afraid that if an investor who comes from a part of the world where being LGBTQ plus is illegal or morally wrong, then I'm going to lie, or I'm going to have to pretend to be something I'm not, or I'm going to have to not mention a spouse, or I'm going to have to be super closed off and maybe delete all of my social profiles if I'm trying to do business somewhere where I'm not accepted.
Yeah.
So creating a world, which is part of the reason why we launched Chasing Rainbows, is to be a venture capital fund where you can come in and be your 100% authentic self and not have to worry about what the person across your Zoom screen or across the table is going to think about you.
Yeah.
You can talk openly about your same-sex spouse or trans child or whatever it might be, and no one's going to blink an eye. It's just normal. We're all human. Let's get to business. Are you going to make us money? That's kind of the bottom line. And if founders are worried if there are founders worried about something like that, that's going to prevent them from being successful. Right. So
they're not probably going to the Koch brothers for money.
Exactly. You're already limited.
That's amazing.
So that's part of the reason why we launched Chasing Rainbows. And we've heard stories from founders, and specifically female founders that present as butch, or male founders that present as more femme, or trans founders specifically that walk into rooms and don't get the time of day, or the investors brush them off, and their idea could be incredible or amazing, and the founder's super intelligent and the best person to pull it off because he always talk about founder market fit.
Interesting.
And
So you run across the founders in your community, in this community, that are getting the brush off.
Yep, 100%.
From
And
VC firms, from partners at VC. Yeah.
Both overtly and kind
Wow.
of subtly, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes there's a thing called affinity bias, right? Where you want to
Right.
invest into people that you associate with, or
Right.
that you look like, or went to your school, or have a similar socioeconomic background. If you're kind of a traditional venture capitalist who's, let's say, a 50-year-old white straight cis male, and a trans founder walks in who didn't go to the same university or is from a different part of the US,
Right.
the likelihood of them investing in you off the bat is incredibly small. They don't even know how to ask questions of this founder, where to gauge their experience, their expertise. There could be, even if the conversation went super well and all the answers were top notch and the founder knocked it out of the park, there still is a higher likelihood of there not being an investment because of this affinity bias crisis. And that's
super sad.
Exacerbated whenever you get to more underrepresented intersectional communities in the LGBTQ plus community, like Black founders who are queer, or a queer female founder who is, a person of color, et cetera, et cetera. So it just gets exacerbated more and more, and it's a little frustrating. And we hear that all the time from our founders.
And I'm guessing you guys have no problem getting on any cap tables like that.
No,
right?
not at all.
If they're from this community, like, of course they're going to take your money, right?
And it's amazing. And we get super competitive cap tables. Founders come to us and they tell us that they want us on their cap table.
Right.
We have this amazing founder, the founder of Tome, Nadia Dougal, and her team. Nadia's a professor at Berkeley, and they had no trouble raising from what I can understand.
AI-powered document intelligence for safes, and I've used their platform. Really good one. Yeah.
And Nadia was like, we want you on our cap table. And that was a no-brainer for us. So we hopped on. And we have other founders that are coming to us that are very competitive investment rounds, and they want us on their cap table. And to the point where we don't have enough money to invest into these.
I'm really familiar with that problem.
Rounds. Yeah. So any LPs out there, get at me.
Yeah, exactly.
And then but then we have these other deals that come in through kind of like cold outreach that are heart wrenchers, right? Like somebody came to us who potentially hasn't ever gotten an investment meeting because they're a trans founder out of Tennessee, for example, and they're really struggling in fundraising. And even if we're not going to invest into a deal like that, we'll try to steer them in the right direction. We'll take a call with almost all or any LGBTQ plus founder. Last year, we did 520 calls in total, and we invested into 10 companies, which is a very low investment rate.
And then I think that's what founders need to realize, when you are, it's not you, it's the portfolio construction. It's all the other companies that the VCs are seeing that month, that year, that quarter. And, Patrick just said it, right? Like you just said it, like we're capital constrained all the time.
Yep.
And we can only make a very limited number of bets. So a lot of times it's not that it's an easy no for us. It's just like, it's not the best thing we saw that month or that quarter.
Totally.
And we can only say yes like 10 times a year, or whatever it is, whatever that number is.
Yeah, and it is rough for there's a couple other LGBTQ plus VC firms now that exist. There's Colorful Capital, Pride Fund out of Ohio, and us, and then of course Gangels. But they're more
have a fund, or are they just syndicating?
It's their syndicate. They're launching Gangels AI and Gangels Health, I think. And then there's, I believe, an enterprise software fund getting launched as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
However, now if you're an LGBTQ plus founder, there's an interesting, more nuanced problem with being a community focused fund. Is folks then think that they will automatically get money from you if they're a part of the community that you're
Just get to a
representing.
meeting.
Yes.
Or get to a solid consideration of the deck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and we will consider the deck, and we will likely have a meeting, and we will try to steer you in the right direction.
Yeah.
There has been an interesting, that you bring up kind of a funny point. Some folks trying to slide in who are not LGBTQ plus, which I've gotten that question from LPs too. Like, how are you able to tell if someone's LGBTQ plus or not? And my response is, if a founder needs to lie about their sexual identity or their orientation in order to get a meeting with a venture capitalist, then their company isn't good.
Yeah.
Because if they need to resort to such low levels, then no other VC has invested in them at that point, then we're not going to invest in them regardless.
Now, where's the line drawn? Does it have to be a co-founder, or could it be an exec, or
member
could it be
of the founding team?
Member of the founding team. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So founder, co-founder. And for the most part, all of our investments, for example, have max 3 founders, and all of them have at least one who's LGBTQ plus. Most of them are entirely comprised of LGBTQ plus teams.
Right.
But the product or service or company itself doesn't need to be focused on the LGBTQ plus community, which is something I like to highlight.
Well, you're limiting your addressable market right there.
By a substantial amount. I think the Gangel's Health Fund, for example, is focused on health companies that focus on the LGBTQ plus community. But sometimes having that narrow of an approach for a thesis makes sense. For us, we wanted to have an open, a broader scope for our TAM, so to speak.
So talk a little bit about kind of your fundraising tactics. You guys have had a lot of success coming on really amazing podcasts like the Ignite podcast, obviously.
Absolutely.
What else has been successful for you guys? How are you guys going out there and finding the LPs that have the money and are in the community?
Yeah,
we care about it.
Are turning over all the rocks. We've done a lot of brand development. We have strategically gone out to get featured on a lot of LGBTQ plus lists. So we were in PitchBook last year. We were at NBCA, did a list. This Ben won. I keep on nominating Ben for awards. Ben nominates me for awards. We get other folks to nominate us for awards. We nominate other people for awards that are our friends in the emerging manager space. And all of this kind of has created a catalyst to get our brand out there.
Yeah.
So folks now Google LGBTQ plus venture capitalist, and we're the first kind of people that come up.
Yeah.
So that's been really good for us in terms of visibility. And we get asked to be on podcasts like this. And again, Ben is in Spain right now. I think he's speaking on a panel either in a couple of days. We're doing something in Vancouver in April. I'm hosting a big event with Cedars-Sinai in April as well with JP Morgan. We are constantly out there doing very visible things.
Yep.
Writing content pieces. We're getting published. I am in the midst of writing a request for information for like a UN paper that's going out on LGBTQ plus entrepreneurship. We joined a think tank for LGBTQ plus investors to try to drive more transparency in data collection for queer founders. So it's a lot of visibility is how we're kind of driving it. So that has been good ROI for brand, but how does that translate to LP dollars? Most of it is just so we can get our foot in the door for some of these larger events or high profile events where we can meet people face to face, and that's been the biggest kind of bang for our buck. We'll go to the StartOut Awards in New York City. Here in Los Angeles, where I'm based, I'll go to a lot of fundraisers for LGBTQ plus nonprofits, same in San Francisco. And we can chat with a lot of high net worth LGBTQ plus folks or folks that care about empowering the LGBTQ plus ecosystem about diversifying their investment portfolio. If they're already angel investing, a lot of high net worth folks are angel investing, but they don't know they could be an LP. They don't know what that is.
Right.
They don't know they can invest into a VC fund. Specifically here in like Los Angeles and San Francisco, perhaps everybody knows about it. But I do a lot of basic LP education for folks here in LA. When I go to New York, New York's still pretty pretty knowledgeable about the LP game. But down in Miami and Austin, Chicago, we're planning kind of road shows on educating these high net worths at these events focused on the greater LGBTQ plus ecosystem, mostly on nonprofits, to try to get those folks to not only donate money to these nonprofits that are impactful, that are helping the greater LGBTQ plus community, but also, hey, if you want to invest into a fund, these are the pros and cons of doing so. It's de-risked as opposed to being an angel investor. If you invest into 2 deals with that check, you could invest into our fund and get that spread out to 30 plus deals, whatever we end up having for our portfolio. And that's been a very powerful strategy for us, but it's legwork. It is a ton of travel, a ton of conversations, a ton of Zoom meetings, a ton of coffees, a ton of dinners, and it's been paying off slowly but surely. We'll get those.
Yeah. I wish somebody told me, you'd never stop fundraising before I got into venture.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending treadmill of fundraising.
And you go a period of time with no closings on any LPs, and you get super frustrated.
Yep.
And then, I was in an elevator with somebody in San Francisco a couple of months ago, and I had a rainbow pin on, and this guy turned to me and asked me what I did, and I said I'm in venture capital, and I have an LGBTQ plus fund. That guy became an LP.
Nice.
And it was
He's
after
well, let me learn about that. Yeah.
Totally. So you never know where you could raise money. And I have I don't have it on today. I wish I would have done it for this podcast, but I have a pretty fancy rainbow unicorn pin that I like to wear to make sure everybody knows.
I love that. Because, not only are you, passionate about the area, obviously, but you want to help the community. And then you just need to find like-minded people to back the fund. It helps the community. And so it's just like a self-reinforcing cycle. I'm jealous, right? Because Team Ignite's so broad, right? It's all software, right? B2B. And, we ignite startups as a team. That's kind of the ethos, but we don't have a particular, other than, building great software to impact lives, impact businesses, but it makes it so much easier when you have this very specific audience.
Yeah.
And I've seen this with friends that raise funds, that if they have a very refined thesis that's very specific, you can fundraise from the right people, you can back the right people. That it's all an interlocking thing for your fund.
Absolutely. And I think the clarity and simplicity of our thesis does make it a lot easier for us to raise as a fund one. And now that we have portfolio companies, we have 10 companies right now, we can start bragging about what they're accomplishing.
Right.
And we have a very diverse group of founders that come from the entire alphabet of LGBTQ plus. And we're very happy with what they're all doing. And we get to brag about them now to pipelined LPs. And we'll bring in founders that are doing really well for kind of like a town hall, for example, is something we're playing around with. So we do a lot of work with StartOut, for example. So we did an LP 101 session with StartOut last year, and I think we're going to do something like that again this year. So partnering with other ecosystem catalysts like StartOut has been super beneficial for us. But now that we have this massive pipeline of potential LPs, we want to highlight our portfolio company specifically this year is one of our key tactics, and get them excited about, this company's now in Saudi. We have a great company that's called Gosu Academy, that is an e-gaming platform, and they have a ton of growth and they're doing really well. So why not get them in front of potential LPs to excite them about one of our portfolio companies?
Right.
And for a lot of these high net worths that aren't necessarily super in the weeds of venture or startups or whatever, getting this really cool narrative about this company that is doing really well and ideally will have a great exit one day is a good kind of seal the deal move for us to take for them. And that's
very cool.
So like any tactic in our arsenal that we can get to close on more LP dollars, we've considered or are considering.
Yeah. Are there countries or regions that are not as conducive to this community that you tend to kind of shy away from, either from a startup or LP perspective? And
Yeah, it's interesting. We initially actually got some cold inbound from LPs in the Middle East, and we just out of curiosity I hopped on a call with one of them, and within 5 minutes it was very clear that they didn't understand what our thesis was, and then it was a quick no for them. But I used to run
and
programs.
even some of those regions, I mean, they're putting your life at risk because the cultural, mores are just so against that.
Money talks, and I used to run programs in Saudi and in Bahrain with 500, and I spent a lot of time there. I have some great friends and networks in that part of the world, and there are plenty of LPs that would love to invest in a fund like ours, but their hands are tied because of what you just kind of mentioned. But if our fund were to do really, really well in Fund 1, and we would have an amazing multiple, or our LPs would
if you crack out a
make a
10x
ton of
fund,
money,
you're gonna have LPs lined up to
doesn't matter.
invest.
Yeah, those folks are going to come to us and ask to be a part of the fund.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how quickly those types of beliefs will shift when there's money to be made.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been one thing. We've had companies come to us from sub-Saharan Africa, for example, from other parts of the world, where it might be a little bit more dangerous to be LGBTQ plus. And then there's a question of, if we invest into these companies, how do we position ourselves on the cap table if it's going to scare away other local investors?
Right.
We have to take into consideration all of these things. For Fund 1, we are predominantly US focused. 20% of our portfolio can be abroad. We'll likely only invest in countries where LPs come from. And right now we have an LP from Brazil. We're doing a lot of work with Canada, so we'll probably get some companies out of Canada, and then likely Western Europe. So there's no real risk there. But as we think about Fund 2, and we would love to be more international in scope, we do need to take that into consideration, because we want to find these great founders, but we also don't want to out anyone and put them in danger.
Yeah. Why does venture have such a catch-22 that you mentioned earlier? Why is it so hard to break into venture?
Venture is a old boys club, and I think a system like venture is ready for a seismic shift, and I believe that the shift is happening, but folks are really adverse to letting different perspectives and voices in it to enable and catalyze the shift. And in order to get, you need to find a tiny little slit or crack. If you're not coming from Big Four, an Ivy, you didn't exit your company for billions of dollars or whatever, then your chances of breaking into venture is infinitesimal. You have to be so hungry, and the folks that are able to break in are either lucky, or they're so motivated and are able to get their foot in the crack to pry it open a little bit so that they can get in, and then ideally hold that crack open a little bit longer, so more folks can get in to kind of spread that wealth. And because it's honestly the most fascinating, best industry that I can ever hope to work in, and every day I learn something new, and it's kept secret and guarded for a reason. And
I think it's just so freaking awesome that, and you and I have both made career decisions to be here, and made lots of steps in our lives to do it. And I had that exact same experience where MBA from Berkeley, I should be able to break into venture, right? And like after a few months of trying, I'm like, I don't think this is going to happen, and I think I should probably just figure out how to do my own thing.
Totally.
Maybe it was the catch-22 thing that you described, and I'm a white man, like from a top school, like I should have broke in, right? But I think, I think there's just a lot of what you described, the old boys club of it.
And it's a funnel problem, right?
Yeah.
There are so many really talented, amazing people trying to break into it. I think it does oftentimes come down to that founder VC attracts, in my mind, a lot of very entrepreneurially spirited people.
Mhm.
And folks that just like venture and think that it'd be cool to get into it one day. Sometimes those folks are able to break in just by nature of
Yeah.
their pedigree or who they know and all that stuff, and that's
It
frustrating
is very
for the rest of us.
entrepreneurial. Yeah,
But
I think that's a good point. It's not as hard as starting a company, but it is hard and it is a lot of work.
Yep.
And you have to be a self-starter. You have to be the kind of person that's going to roll up your sleeves and just take the next step. It's not a job. It's not a job. It's
No.
not like this thing where, oh yeah, I'm going to give you this great pay and benefits to do it 40 hours a week.
Yep.
Like as we're talking, this is President's Day. Like we're recording this on President's Day. If you're recording, so we should be on holiday. My kids are home.
Yeah.
But here we are recording a podcast and doing our work. Right.
Yeah.
We're both doing this podcast because we love venture and we love startups. Right. And that's the kind of thing. Like there are no holidays. I don't work as hard as a founder, but I'm working really hard at it.
Totally. I mean, burnout is real for us. I will say, on Friday I had a fever of 103, and I was sending emails under my covers because I had so many things
like
to
shivering.
do. truly shivering. Which is not a healthy thing to do. To all listeners,
don't do that.
Eat soup and drink liquids if you're sick, and turn off your phone.
Yeah,
but it's a hustle, and
it is. But I love it. Like every minute there's another chance to meet another amazing founder working on some amazing new technology in a new market, and that way it's very addictive because you just get to learn so much and see so much, and it's hard to turn it off. Actually, once you turn it on, you're kind of like it sucks you in, and it's hard to just go enjoy yourself because you're just so wrapped up in it. It's hard for me to just sit on the couch and watch a movie. I'm like, gosh, I could go, look at some decks and
exactly. Or listen to the VC podcasts are my jam. And
oh yeah, totally. There's some of your favorite VC podcasts. There's 20 VCs probably up there for me. All In, of course, and
All In is good. TechCrunch, Equity is really
podcast.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
VC, is it VC Unlocked? It's not called VC Unlocked with Samir. Is really good.
Oh, yeah.
And I think those are my main ones. Yeah, I guess
I recently had to migrate from Google Podcasts because I'm an Android user.
Yeah.
So I never was able to use Apple Podcasts, which I'm sure is amazing. But of course, in true Google fashion, they decided unilaterally, hey, we're just going to shut that down and kind of integrate it with YouTube Music, which they have not done properly at all. And now it's like this quirky experience that is not good at anything.
Yeah.
I'm not very happy about that.
Well, that's annoying.
What was the name of the podcast?
So it's called Venture Unlocked, and it's with Samir Kaji. He's great.
I'll have to check that out.
Definitely recommend following Samir on socials as well. And
yeah, I've definitely run across them for sure. What about books? Any books you can think of for listeners out there that are just really great on venture or startups?
Secrets of Sand Hill Road is really great. I got my signed copy by Scott Cooper.
I took a class with him at Berkeley, actually. I took his, that was the very last course I took at Berkeley.
He spoke at 500 Startups, the Stanford program that I did. Actually, we did an office visit at his office. We would bring the cohort to his office, and then he handed out signed copies of that book. That's definitely a great book.
Yeah,
and then my venture Bible is by, my gosh, Feld and Mendelsohn are the authors. Venture Deals. It's the easiest.
Deals, yeah.
Venture Deals is like when I first got a job at 500 Global, I sat in day one of this Berkeley course, actually. And the professor told the entire class, go get Venture Deals. And it's the best 101 venture capital thing for founders. So they make it super easy for founders to understand. Yeah. So it's from the perspective of helping you as a founder figure out how to actually talk venture. So for someone who didn't know venture at all, it was really, really useful. And I wish I could show you my copy. It's half chewed by my dog. It is filled with notes. There's like missing pages probably. It's like an old treasure map at this point with like burnt holes and stuff. That is one of my go-to, and I always recommend people to listen to that. It's just a basic everything you need to know.
It's kind of lays it all out for you.
Yeah.
What's the most impactful piece of advice you ever received?
Honestly, I go back to my boss at 500, who she told me if I wanted to do venture, to do it in a way that I was actually passionate about something. So I would actually look forward to doing venture, and doing a fund focused in LGBTQ plus empowerment is infinitely better than me doing a fund focused on anything else. And I get to wake up every day
Yeah.
very excited about that. And as we grow the firm, chasing rainbows, and I hope to grow it into fund 2, 3, 4, into a large institutional firm with many funds and iterations. Who knows? Will my interest change to a vertical or something else? I'm not sure, but the fact that I'm able to marry both of those passions into one professional track is something I never thought would be possible, and it very much is. And it sounds very cliche to say do what you love, and that's very I feel like I'm in a position in my life where I'm fortunate to be able to be doing
so
what I
true, though.
love.
It is cliche, but it is so true. And you have to look at yourself and be like, do I like what I'm doing here? And would I do it if I had, 10 or 20 million in the bank, or whatever the number is for you?
100%. Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then you got to keep trying. You got to keep iterating. And for me, it took 15 plus years of iterating after I washed out of Wall Street to figure out, like, what would I do if I won the lottery?
Yep.
And I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing it right now, talking to you and investing in companies. And I wouldn't work as hard at it. I think I'd probably have a staff.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be working 7 days a week, but I'd still do it.
Totally.
So, and that's important. I'd love to be a DJ. I'd love to be able to create really great hip hop beats. So
I would love to do a very nice beachfront Airbnb somewhere, and just chill there and manage
listen to the waves crash in.
Yeah, but then
that
at
is
night,
a life goal of mine, is just
totally.
sitting. Yeah,
but still moonlight as a GP.
Yeah. Yeah, like do what the homebrew guys did and just be like, I'm not going to take any money anymore after like fund 4 or 5, and I'm just going to chill here on the beach. And I'll have a chief of staff, principal level person take all the first calls.
Exactly.
And I'll just take the second and third calls when it's like, hey, this is definitely a shoe-in. They want you on the cap table. This is an A+ deal.
That's the VC dream.
That's the VC dream. That's all of our dreams, right? Because we love getting to yes.
Yep.
But like you described your funnel, like similar. Like our funnel's like 1 in 250.
Yeah.
Or like 1 in 300.
Yep.
So it's kind of like I have to say no a lot, and I'd love for somebody else to do the 299 no's, and I just have to like meet with the top 2 or 3 potential yeses.
Exactly.
So given your kind of your broad thesis, what kind of sectors are you most excited about these days?
I am personally very excited about climate. I think climate is incredibly exciting. We have 3 climate companies in our portfolio of 10. I spent time working a lot with the European ecosystem, and I think the money there focused in climate and what's happening in the EU is super exciting for climate companies. And I know one of our companies actually is spending a lot of time over in Europe to get access to more contracts and capital, and the founder gold is doing quite well, and that makes me very happy, A, as an investor into this portfolio company, but B, that the climate space is exploding in other parts of the world. So I think in the US, there's a ton of money going into climate, and all these donor advised funds are interested in investing into climate VC funds, which to me indicates that there's going to be a growing number of climate companies.
Yep.
And these bridges between Europe and the US, I think, is super interesting for tech transfer programs.
Yeah. Yay, capitalism. All we got to do is like focus the free hand, and we can
save climate via capitalism.
Yeah.
Save the climate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited because I used to work in solar. I was director of energy policy for Sierra Club in the state of Hawaii before I moved to California, and so I was really, really into it about 12, 15 years ago, something like that. And I kind of looked at solar, and it was doubling every 18 to 24 months. I was like, okay, well, we're like 8 doublings away here. And that was 2012. And so now we're, 12 years later. Yeah. And we've doubled it, 6 times and a few more doublings. And we're going to have this problem of like, how do we store, and this is already a problem, but how do we store this energy, and how do we?
The infrastructure on energy storage is another problem that innovation and technology can help solve, right? Which I am excited, and the folks that I chat with who are deeply entrenched in the climate space are fascinating. And I'm now part of a WhatsApp group of climate VCs, and I just kind of sit idly by and watch the chatter, because I am in no means a technical expert in the space, but it gives me hope, I think, in terms of what we have, the solutions that we're going to come up with to deal with some of these large global potential catastrophes.
Well, this was an amazing conversation. I could talk to you for another hour about this stuff. How should potential LPs and startups get a hold of you?
For sure, you can check out our website at www.chasingrainbows.vc. My email is patrick@chasingrainbows.vc as well. Feel free to reach out. We can send you our deck, any additional information that you'd require, data room, all that stuff. And you can follow us on Twitter, I guess, if you really wanted to. Excuse me, X. Let's edit that.
Whatever that is, yeah.
And I look forward to hearing from you. And thanks again so much, Brian, for having me on the pod.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for coming. This was great.
Absolutely.